All right. Well, this is Kevin, Beetle of Vector Tech Group, and we're going to get started. Um, First of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for being a part of this webinar. I hope that the information here is helpful and that we use this time as a benefit to you guys, and you come out of this with some new information and hopefully feel good about being a part of this. So again, just starting out by introducing myself, Kevin Beadle. I'm one of the senior systems engineers for Vector Tech Group. I have been with the company for 8 years, and I have been in this IT industry for the last 13 years. Part of what I do here as one of the senior systems engineers is I do a lot of work on firewalls. I do a lot of work in virtualization. We do server network design and management. I'm pretty much one of our specialists for Office 365 and do a lot of remote management and software deployment for our customers. That is just kind of a that's just kind of a brief who I am, what I do with the company. On this webinar, we also have Jeff with Fortinet. He's with us also, and I'll give him a minute to quickly introduce himself.
Thanks, Kevin. As Kevin mentioned, I'm Jeff Jones. I'm the channel systems engineer, so I support our partners and all of their efforts to help out their clients, many of which I'm sure are on this call right now. So I've been with Fortinet over 2 years. I actually came into Fortinet as a SLED engineer, moved over to channel, say a year ago or so. I've been in IT for, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but like 25 years. So seen a few things along the way. So appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys today. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Kevin.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So basically, we'll start out with what is this? What are we doing here today? You know, as you all are well aware, this COVID-19 has come along and forced a lot of businesses and schools to scramble for a remote work solution. And to be honest with you, not many were very well prepared. So, you know, in an effort to help customers be more prepared, you know, we wanted to put something together here to help you guys come up with some more long-term options for a remote workforce solution. And with that, how you can safely and securely access your data, basically anytime from anywhere. Now and in the future. So building off of that, the some of the benefits of working remotely, you know, first and foremost, you know, we're looking at increased productivity here. You know, less time spent commuting. You know, most of us, I believe on this, are probably here from Michigan. And as you know, Michigan winters can really make things difficult sometimes. Snow days, you know, there's times where we wake up in the morning and we've got 6 inches of snow on the ground. And if we still have to go into work, a lot of productivity can be lost just simply spending that extra commute time coming into work. So giving users the opportunity to work from home, you know, gives you that increased productivity. With that, obviously, it's going to come with another benefit is lower costs, right? Lower costs for business, operating costs, just and building costs. When you don't have people in the building, you don't have to maintain certain things. It's also another benefit of working remotely. Allows you to make better use of the technology that you have. It basically gives you and the users an opportunity to learn more and be more independent. When you're stuck in an office environment where you've got people around you all the time, you can become very dependent sometimes on others to do things for you. And that remote workforce, again, it gives the end user the ability to start being more independent. Um, and then with that, the flexibility part, working remotely certainly allows for a better work-life balance. With that better work-life balance, you're going to have a happier workforce, and more willing to spend a little bit of extra time, at home working on something. And then, again, that just builds into the more efficient, workforces. People become more efficient. You can also expand above and beyond your normal 8 to 5. Most businesses nowadays, can run beyond the simple 8 to 5, and sometimes not all work has to be done between that 8 to 5 window. And this opens up opportunity for the end users. Some people work better in the morning. Some people work better at night. If you are working from home, if you've got kids, sometimes kids come home from school at 3 o'clock, and it makes sense for some of your work to be paused and put on hold and done later in the evening. And it gives you the flexibility to do all of that. So from there, we want to talk a little bit about how to, some of the safe and secure cloud options that we can help you with to achieve some of this. Microsoft Office 365 is one of those areas where you can utilize. If you're already utilizing it, there are some things that you're probably not utilizing that we could certainly help you with to increase some of that productivity. Teams is a good option. Teams, if you're not familiar with it, Teams offers instant messaging. It offers video conferencing. It allows you to do desktop sharing, so you can share your desktop with another person in the company or outside the company, and gives you some other things like virtual whiteboards. The instant messaging piece is really nice. It allows you to kind of get that instant response, and Teams integrates with your calendar, so that will also allow you to view presence. So if a coworker is available, if they're online, it'll actually show you that they're online. Another a piece of the Office 365 is SharePoint. SharePoint is really beginning to grow and become a very valuable tool, as you can use SharePoint to host files. Any kind of file you can put in SharePoint and have multiple document libraries. SharePoint has the ability to work directly with the online Office. So your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of their files that are in SharePoint can be opened directly from a simple web page. You don't actually have to have the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc., the Office suite installed on each user's machine, and they can actually open, edit, create, and collaborate within those documents in SharePoint. SharePoint also gives you the opportunity to securely share any of those files with individuals or groups within your organization. So you can just like the file servers that most people are used to. Users have restricted access to certain areas they can go and access. SharePoint is no different. SharePoint gives you the same security features of that as well. SharePoint can also give you shared calendars online. So when a user jumps on to SharePoint, you can view event calendars and shared calendars right from within the main page, SharePoint page coming in. And you can even utilize SharePoint for posting announcements and other things that are going on in your company there as well. And OneDrive, Office 365, OneDrive is basically an extension of SharePoint, but for the personal individual. OneDrive is a place where all of your users can store and manage all of their own documents securely, so that they can access them from anywhere, from any device. Google Apps is also another cloud solution that we work with, that we could certainly help with, that many customers are on. And many of the features on Google's side are very similar to Office 365. Google Drive is very similar to SharePoint, but is more of a place where you can just store your files, work online, collaborate with end users in those documents, and you can access them from anywhere at any time, being that they are web-based. Google Apps also has their Hangout chat, so that is their instant messaging piece. So very similar to Teams, and then the Hangout Meet, which allows you to do the video conferencing and screen sharing through that with their product. One of the other areas that we can have, that we could help with, and for the remote workforce, is a solution that we provide, which is our VTG Cloud hosted environment. And that is basically an environment where we can virtually host your applications, all of your data and user accounts, and they live virtually in a fully hosted environment at a data center, somewhere in the country, whether it be here or at a Microsoft data center. And that's accessible even when the beauty of that is it's accessible even when we might not even have power in our area. Your office might be a part of a power outage, and in the typical environment where you have servers on site and other applications that run on site, in this environment you are allowed the ability to basically run that from any device anywhere, because it's not actually in your home office. Everything on the back end, as far as backups, updates, all of that is managed by us on the back end. That's all part of the hosted environment, and it's basically a hands-off for you and all of your workers there. It's essentially a virtual desktop environment that we deliver to the end user. So on to the next part of helping you secure is a VPN. Many of you are probably familiar with this a little bit now. This is kind of where a lot of companies went to due to this COVID-19 and not being fully prepared to support a remote workforce. A VPN is basically it's a virtual private network. And there's many different solutions out there for different types of VPNs that you can use, depending on what the company has, and determines what type of VPNs we can use. Many of you out there might be familiar, and that is why we have Fortinet with us, that we use Fortinet, and we have FortiGate firewalls with most of our customers, and that's kind of our go-to, our choice for VPN. That VPN basically gives you, as the client, it establishes an encrypted connection between your computer and the business network, which allows for secure access to all of your on-site applications, files, printers, computers, and allows you to essentially work securely from home, as if you were actually in the office. In some certain cases where you may have a remote office, or you may have several workers all in one place, there are situations where we can actually utilize a VPN to set up what's called a site-to-site VPN. And that basically just takes a little bit of complexity out on the end user side and allows us to set up a VPN between two connections, so that any device on the network then has full access to the network as if they were in the main office site. VPNs, a lot of people hear, I think on TV now, you hear a lot of information about VPNs, be secure, protect your data. The only thing that I want to go on now, before I actually hand this over to Jeff with Fortinet to extend on all the benefits of what FortiGate can do, is just a simple um, information on when you're joining free Wi-Fi out there. A lot of people are probably not aware, but when you choose to work remotely, if you're not working remotely from home, a lot of people uh, sit in Starbucks, they sit in multiple places and work remotely. This is where a VPN really comes into play and is really important. But what I do want to say is any kind of an open wireless network that doesn't have a password on it. So if you go into a Starbucks and they have a free Wi-Fi and it doesn't have a password on it to begin with for you to get on the network, it's really kind of a recommendation that you steer clear from those. Even though you can connect to that network and then establish a VPN back to your office and do work, the amount of time that your computer has on the network connecting to that open network leaves some open vulnerabilities. And it's always good to make sure you're connecting to a free Wi-Fi that has at least a simple password on it. There's information that goes back and forth between your computer on those non-password protected Wi-Fis that can leave you at risk or vulnerable even after you have that VPN connected. So yeah, that's some of the areas where we can certainly and help out. And I believe we're going to dig deeper into the Fortinet side. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn this over to Jeff, and he can build off of that.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Now I just have to figure out how to, yeah, give me a moment. I'll get my screen shared here. All right. With any luck, should be seeing my title slide there.
Yes, we are.
Perfect. All right, so here we go. So first, I just want to second pretty much everything Kevin said there. Couldn't agree more regarding the free Wi-Fi and all of that. So yeah, we're certainly going to dive into some of the Fortinet pieces of how we can assist with all of this. We're going to open up with just a couple industry challenges, some of which certainly Kevin talked about, but I threw this slide in here just to kind of really drive this point home. Kevin talked about COVID-19, and obviously that's a major driver for everybody working remotely right now. On top of that, the cyber criminals never take a rest. So as you can see on the slide, very simple slide, but we saw phishing attacks go up over 667% in the month of March alone. And that is probably driven by the fact that the cyber criminals know we're working from home now, and we're all paying a lot of attention to the pandemic. Therefore, that's a new avenue to exploit. And so, we'll keep all that in mind as we're going through some of these solutions. So endpoint gaps exist on hosts in every enterprise. And when we start working from home, we really start to expose some of those gaps, right? Because we're not necessarily behind the privacy of our FortiGate that's in our office, when we're in the office. So when we're outside, we're starting to expose some more of these gaps that maybe just normally haven't been a problem. So first, there's a lack of visibility. So with mobility, cloud, user autonomy, companies are losing visibility to their endpoints, making IT security, and especially network security, more of a challenge. Second, there's a lot of unpatched vulnerabilities that continue to be a major issue. It's interesting that Gartner predicts that by the end of this year, 99% of the vulnerabilities exploited will continue to be the ones that security and IT professionals already know about. And this is really showing that, hey, we're spending a lot more time from a network security perspective, making sure our office and all of the assets in our office are secure, right? Because that's where we are most of the time. But now that we're not, in the event that we haven't been paying enough attention to our host security and things like that, 99% of vulnerabilities exploited are already known. So that's really what the cyber criminals are going after right now. And then third, we always have to keep in mind that these attacks are automated and they move fast. So we need to have automation in our security posture to try to act equally as fast or get in front of these threats. So now we'll get into a couple of these teleworker use cases that I'm going to talk about here. So first we've got the basic user, and this is what Kevin was talking about with, going to Starbucks and these types of things. So 90% of employees are considered basic users. These are the folks that just need to get on, you VPN in, you do a few things. That's most of us. However, the other 10% may need more consistent, secure connection to the headquarters. They also may have a wider variety of devices that they need to connect with rather than just a laptop. So we'll talk about the power users and the super users and kind of a few design options to support those. So you're never going to get out of a Fortinet discussion without at least one slide on the security fabric. So we are going to talk about how the teleworker solution ties into the fabric. And the FortiGate itself is still the main component. So, we'll talk about how the fabric agent easily ties into this and visibility and things like that to where you can still really leverage your Fortinet security fabric and your FortiGate. All right, so now we'll get into a few of these scenarios that I talked about with the basic and all of that. So starting out with the basic user, again, this is 90% of us working from home. We could use FortiClient, which is our application that goes on your laptop, and we can use that to create a secure VPN tunnel back to your FortiGate in your office. We would also recommend anytime you're talking about any kind of remote access that two-factor authentication is a great idea. Two-factor authentication being something you have and something you know. Something you know would be your password. Something you have could be FortiToken Mobile, which can be just another app on your phone. That's what I use as a Fortinet employee. They also come in like USB sticks, and there's a couple different form factors for that token. But from the user perspective, that's pretty much it. You've got a client on your laptop, and as an option, a token, and then you would create your VPN tunnel. So with Fortinet, I mean, we're a security company. So anytime we talk about remote access, we're talking about securing access to all of your corporate resources. So as I mentioned, FortiClient includes your SSL VPN, or it includes your IPsec, but it also includes SSL VPN if that's a route you want to go. There's debates on which one of those makes sense when, but that's certainly where Kevin and Vector Tech can help sort that out for you. So VPN capabilities are enhanced with FortiAuthenticator. So FortiAuthenticator, we see on the slide here, that's where your two-factor auth piece comes in. So that's going to manage all of those tokens I talked about. And then we also have the option to use single sign-on between Authenticator and your FortiGate back at your main office. So single sign-on is going to help control access to certain things. For example, making sure the finance folks can get to finance, but the non-finance folks don't, things like that. So this slide just shows, it's a quick splash slide of really, so the FortiClient, as you can see, we have FortiClient for many different operating systems, and there's different capabilities in different operating systems. Now, I always recommend just to check the data sheet for FortiClient anytime you're considering FortiClient on an operating system. Obviously, we continue to put development into this software, so these features do change over time. Honestly, the easiest way to find the data sheet is simply to Google for it. Just FortiClient data sheet, boom, you're right there. It's also on the partner portal for the Vector folks, but again, Google works great. So I also wanted to mention the EMS server, so Enterprise Management Server. Anytime I talk about FortiClient, which again is the software we're talking about to put on your laptop for VPN, you want to be able to manage those. So for the network engineers and admins on the call, obviously, if you've got even 10 people in your environment that are remoting in, what you don't want to do is have to manage 10 separate instances of that software. So the management server, which is included with the FortiClient licensing, it runs on a Windows server. This is how you're going to manage your deployment. You can install client in the background. You can set up web filtering, VPN profiles, all kinds of different things from your EMS server and manage all your folks centrally that way. So here's some really cool stuff. So for those of you that are familiar with the FortiGate and really the fabric and just getting into the FortiGate and seeing visibility, when you're if you're managing stuff in there already, for the folks that are, say, in the office and on the network, you might be used to being able to go in and see some visibility in your firewall. That's what this slide is showing is, hey, I've got FortiGate and I've got some switches. And by the way, this does show just Fortinet devices. The cool thing here is for folks that are VPN'd in using the FortiClient Fabric Agent, which is what we're talking about, you still get to see their visibility in your firewall. So you still get to see, this is an example of just mousing over somebody who's VPN'd in, and you still get a lot of information on them. So that visibility empowers you to do some really other cool stuff, which I know I have in here, hopefully in the next slide or so. So such as, you can still see if a endpoint is compromised, even if they're VPN'd in, because again, if they're VPNing in, they're accessing your corporate resources. So you still want to have the visibility into if these hosts are compromised. And again, being remote, there's an increased risk of compromise. So you have the visibility, and that's what the red circles denote, is these are compromised hosts, which means you can do things like quarantine them and things like that. Certainly you can manually do that from the firewall once you have that visibility, but that can be cumbersome as well. So this is where we would talk about enabling automation in your firewall. And again, any of this stuff that I'm talking about, certainly Vector Tech can help set this up for you or have those conversations and do training, things like that. So for awareness, you can set up automation in your firewall, even for your remote users, to say, hey, if there's a compromised host, let's quarantine them. There's obviously some different options in here. You could also have an email sent out to an admin to make awareness, right? So you can start on the back end, starting to figure out what you need to do to clean that host up. All right, so the next level of user would be the power user. And this is different from the basic user in the sense that one, we don't even have to use the client in this design. So all that conversation we've had about FortiClient, and I'm not going to talk about this design a lot, but the idea here is basically you would have a Forti AP in your house, and that AP would then have a permanent tunnel set up back to your firewall, back at the main office. The advantage there is that you just don't have to set up a VPN, so you've got constant access to the corporate network, and your laptop is basically on your corporate network at that point. So again, just more consistent, maybe easier to work with on a regular basis because it's going to work as if you're actually in your office. You would still use two-factor auth to gain those access. And the reason that's recommended, even though you're not doing a VPN, you're extending your company's SSID into your home. So you're extending your borders, certainly. And so additional security such as two-factor auth is still strongly recommended. And last, we have the super user. So the super user is going to be somebody who is really taking their office home. And when I say you're taking your office home, that could be more than just your laptop. That could be your IP phone, for example. Maybe you've got tablets or other devices that you use in your office that you need all of those to be on your network. So in this instance, you would actually have a smaller FortiGate in your house. And we do scale these down anywhere from, a small desktop unit up to large carrier grade. I'm sure you don't need a carrier grade one in your house unless you're Kevin Beadle. And just kidding. And
love it.
So The idea with the FortiGate in here is, well, one, the FortiGates have ports on them. So in a small office like this, you could plug in your IP phone. Maybe you have multiple computers, whatever the case. So you have the ability to plug things in. You also could do a FortiGate that has Wi-Fi built in. So if you had things that, such as tablets that needed to jump on the Wi-Fi that way, you could. So the first major advantage is having multiple devices that can still connect to your corporate network. The second major advantage is that now that you've got a FortiGate in your house, one, you can set up that site-to-site VPN tunnel between firewalls, which is secure, and it's kind of a set it and forget it type of scenario. Last, with a FortiGate, you now have a lot more options that you can take advantage of from that FortiGate, such as web filtering and application filtering. It depends how you license it, but you have a lot more capabilities. You can do split tunneling, all kinds of cool stuff. So you can really protect your assets a lot more locally, right? So, and some of that is what this slide's getting into. So the dedicated VPN tunnel is where you get a lot more options when you have a firewall. So I'm going to go ahead and move past this because I feel like I already spoke to it. So security, right? As I mentioned, Fortinet is a security company. So anytime we do anything, really security is the foundation. So first thing I'll mention is our threat intelligence. So for those of you not aware, we have a thing called FortiGuard. So FortiGuard is our intelligence in the sky. We've literally got hundreds of engineers and analysts who are gathering intel from all over the world. I think we've got them in 31 different countries. The analysts, that is, but we've got Fortinet devices deployed worldwide. So they're gathering intel from all of these endpoints and basically figuring out what's threats, what's not, keeping all of our databases updated. So anytime you're using a Fortinet device, you've got the power of FortiGuard backing you up. Also, with any of our deployment scenarios that we've talked about, we can also leverage FortiSandbox Cloud, which means we're still looking at URLs that come in via email or however, and we're still looking at attachments and files and things like that. And we have the ability to look for zero-day viruses, which, so FortiClient can automatically send all of that to FortiSandbox Cloud. Just, again, it's depending on how FortiClient is licensed. So one little slide here about FortiEDR. So this is one of our newer products. So FortiEDR is the only endpoint protection platform on the market with both pre and post compromise protection. FortiEDR allows your teleworkers to remain productive by diffusing threats. So, the short on FortiEDR, it is a separate piece of software from FortiClient. And there is a little bit of overlap in functionality, but they are designed to do different things. FortiEDR is not going to do your VPN or anything like that. FortiEDR is really designed to say, hey, in the event that you do get a virus or something, I'm going to stop it from doing any malicious activity on your machine. And we've got whole other programs that we can go through to get into FortiEDR in depth. If that's something that you're interested in, please let Vector Tech know, and we'll go from there. So the other thing I wanted to touch on was FortiNAC. So this is our network access control. This honestly, sometimes it gets overlooked when we talk about network access. The teleworker thought process gets overlooked, but the reality of it is, regardless of how you're coming into your network, we need to be thinking about what device you're using and how you're accessing the network and what that means for how what assets we want you to be able to get to on your on your corporate network. So a NAC is still 100% viable piece of the network when we're talking about remote access. Even more so, some might say, because if you're working from home, you definitely have the ability to use your own computer or things like that. So a NAC can help automate and understand what that means. If you're going to set up a VPN on your own machine, does that mean you have limited access now, or is there a security policy in place that's going to allow you based on this, that, or the other thing? So that's where NAC can really help make your security really give you that continuity regardless of where you're at and where your employees are working from. All right, so on the tail end of here, I've got some diagrams that just kind of outline these scenarios I've talked about to just kind of, at a high level, kind of show what we're talking about here. So this is the basic user, which again uses FortiClient to VPN in, hopefully uses FortiToken for that two-factor authentication. So this is you at home, and over here in your office, you've got your FortiGate. If you're using FortiClient, I'd highly recommend using the management server to manage all of those client deployments. And then FortiAuthenticator is your two-factor auth. So yeah, so that pretty much outlines what you would need for that. For your power user, again, this is where you have the AP at home and you're still using two-factor auth because you care about the integrity of your data. You've got your FortiGate back at your main office and FortiAuthenticator. Notice at this point, we don't have the EMS server because for this design, you don't have to have FortiClient for that VPN connectivity. So, and then we've got the power user. So this looks, on the head end piece, it looks very similar, if not identical, to the last one, right? Because we don't have EMS, we still got your FortiGate and your two-factor auth with Authenticator. But back at the crib, we've got a FortiGate instead. So we've got a small FortiGate there. We've got your phone, maybe an AP, maybe not. Still using two-factor auth, but now what it doesn't show here is basically whatever other devices you have that you need to connect. Maybe you've got devices you're testing with, what have you. You can connect all of those in this scenario and connect back directly using your IPsec VPN. So this is definitely the most secure and the most versatile design for remote work. So the last slide I've got here, and you might want to take a snapshot of this if you're interested. Actually, snapshots won't work because these aren't the actual, these are links. But this is something we can certainly share down the road through Vector. But we've got a lot more information that can be looked at via these links that, again, taking a snapshot is useless. But also worth mentioning, there is a free download for FortiClient. Now, that comes with a lot of caveats, meaning the free version of FortiClient is VPN only, but when we're talking about teleworker, that makes sense, but it's not going to include other features like web filtering or antivirus or anything like that. It cannot be managed via the EMS server. It doesn't include support. So it is basically designed for that one-off situation where, hey, I need to VPN in. That's all I need. And so that's free. You can get it right here from www.forticlient.com. That's all I've got. So I will hand it back to Kevin.
So Jeff, one thing, somebody's asking if you could just share the links in the chat. Could you do that?
Yeah, I think I can probably manage that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, if anybody has a question, if they want to just chat and say, yeah, you have a question, we can unmute you so you can talk as well, if you'd rather do that.
And Kevin, I know there was a question earlier regarding Zoom for you when you were going through your piece. Did you?
Yeah, I believe Maury responded back to that one.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, Kevin, why don't you just hit real quick on kind of things you like about Zoom, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different options out there. Zoom is a really good option. It's kind of gained the most attention lately with this COVID-19. I don't remember the exact statistics, but I do know that they went from like a 10 million user base to a 200 million user base, all within, I think, a couple of days. So it's very widely used. It's very easy to use. They have free accounts that you can set up and use. It's really a great product. There's obviously some limitations to the free version, but it seems to work really well. And we have we have some people that have really good expertise in that and can support that. On the flip side, it's also, if you followed anything in the news on that increase in Zoom, there's been a lot of concern out there with security. You know, Zoom is very easy to use and works well for a lot of reasons. That's because it's pretty open. You know, there's literally there are web pages out there that you can go to that will search the web for meetings that you can barge into, open meetings. And I mean, I think it's returning like 100 meetings like every minute. And all of these meetings are things where you can just go join. So there's a lot to think about when it comes to business, you know, with Zoom. And you know, proprietary information, security. You certainly don't want to go on and you know, have a discussion within the business that pertains to anything, you know, HR, or just, I mean, really anything, not knowing that you're fully secure. So that's where some of the other options out there right now, if you're an Office 365 subscriber, you know, Teams is really a good solution for that. It's secure. You have to be authenticated to get in. You know, there's a couple other solutions out there as well. You know, WebEx from Cisco, you know, is certainly one as well, a good one. You know, these are all things that I think in the kind of the heat of the moment, when people really need something and they just need to be able to get connected, Zoom really fills a gap. But if you're concerned about security or long-term usage, it's probably better to sit down with somebody. You know, we could certainly help with that, to say, you know, what are you actually trying to accomplish? What do you want to use it for? You know, we want to make sure that you're secure and that data isn't going out, that shouldn't be going out. You know, that you can track that information. There's a lot of other options in there to think about when it comes to that, and you know, what people can share, whether it be files or desktop imaging. That, you know, having those types of controls are also really really important in these different solutions to think about.
Thanks, Kev. One more question that just popped up. How does Google Drive or Office 365 handle the unsecured Wi-Fi spots at Starbucks? I think he's referring to more the security aspect of this. If you're using SharePoint or Teams or Google Drive, and you have data, important data there.
Yeah. So I'll just hit on that real quick, and I'll try not to get too technical, but basically if you connect to any kind of a wireless solution, you know, hotspot, somewhere that doesn't have a password on it, you know, even when you connect to a secure site, so what can happen is you could have a bad guy sitting there at Starbucks along with you. And when your computer is actually communicating with the wireless and it's talking back and forth to get you connected on the wireless, information goes back and forth that's visible to anybody else that's on the network. That information can be captured. And as many of you probably know, when you go to websites, banking websites, Google, Office 365, we get warned all the time now about, hey, this site uses cookies, right? Cookies are there to help you know, make a good experience, but they also cache information. And cookies when cookies get sent back and forth, if you connect to an unsecured wireless network, that information can be captured as well. So a third party can actually, if they know what they're doing, you know, and really want to, they could capture a cookie on an open Wi-Fi, and then essentially browse to a web page that you are on and utilize that cookie to impersonate you. And you wouldn't have to log in, because, you know, every time you go in and out of a website, you don't have to log in every single time, because that cookie is there to say, hey, I am Kevin Beadle, and this is still me, and I've authenticated, and we're going to make this experience really good for you, and let you back in without having to log in. So if somebody was able to gather that information and pull that cookie, they could essentially hijack that web session from their computer and open up that website as if they were you, impersonating you. So that's why it's really important. I don't honestly connect to any website or any sites whatsoever out there that are free Wi-Fi that don't have a simple password on them. When they even if it just has a password of, you know, if you go to Starbucks and they're, you know, you walk in and it says their password is 1234. Before your computer even connects with a password, it creates a secure connection between your computer and their network, and immediately and basically blocks anybody from being able to see any information going back and forth between your device and that Wi-Fi network.
Awesome. Thanks, Kev. Any other questions from the chat? Anything for Jeff on the Fortinet side of things?
There was a question about if there's ongoing support to ensure security moving into the future. Did we already talk about that?
Ongoing support, I guess, from what perspective?
Not sure. I just read the question.
Right.
Fair enough. Well, I will respond to it in this manner. So when you use FortiClient or any of the Fortinet products, I mentioned FortiGuard, which is constantly keeping everything updated. So as long as you have a valid support contract for any of your Fortinet products, you can configure, you know, thing like the FortiGate, for example, could go out and pull database updates in a regular interval, or you could allow FortiGate to accept updates as we push them out, which will keep it updated a little bit more, but there's reasons why you would go one way or the other. So the short of it is, as long as you have a support contract, Fortinet is constantly updating all of our security devices of various databases. And that's true for FortiClient as well, with the exception of that free version of FortiClient that I mentioned that doesn't include support because it's VPN only. So there's really no web filtering or antivirus or anything that goes in there that would require updates.
Thanks, Jeff.